Hello class, my name is Susan Jenkins, and for my presentation today I'm going to be talking about The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. I do want to start off this presentation by saying that this presentation is about my own perceptions and opinions of the story. Since we did not get to talk about the story in class, Dr. Trevitt gave me the ability to just kind of have more of a discussion about what I think of the story and what I think its meanings and themes and everything are about. I know everybody read it, but I did want to do a little plot overview just because it's been a little while. In the story, it's about a narrator trying to convince the reader that he is not mentally ill or insane. He does this by telling the story about how he killed an old man with an evil eye. He's very proud of the fact that he was only caught because he confessed after hearing the man's heart beating in the floorboards. The main points I want to talk about in this story are Poe's writing style, his symbolism, and the themes he used throughout the entire story. For writing style, I chose repetition, short sentences, and dashes and vivid descriptions to focus on. Started off with repetition, and an example I picked from the story was, and I kept pushing it on steadily. This is something that Poe did throughout the entire story, is where he would repeat like adjectives and verbs and just different words. And I think this enforced the idea that the narrator is actually, instead of being sane, he's actually insane. A common portrayal of people with mental illness is that they repeat words a lot. And I think Poe kind of started off this trend by doing this. He kept repeating these words, which I think really puts doubt in which early on puts doubt in the reader's mind that maybe the narrator is not as steady-minded as we'd like to think. Short sentences he uses. I really liked how he uses these short sentences, and he goes in between using short sentences and long sentences, which I think is something that is super interesting. I really like it when writers do this, because I think it keeps the readers more focused because of the short to long sentences. An example I picked was object there was none, passion there was none, I loved the old man, he never wronged me. I have a love-hate relationship with this because it immediately puts questions in the reader's mind really early on. This is on the first page, I think it's in the second or third paragraph, where he immediately asks the reader to figure out, why did he kill the old man? Because he didn't like his eye? If he loved him, why did he kill him? So already off the bat, we have the reader questioning the narrator's, for one, reliability and reasoning for what he did. Poe also used a lot of dashes in the story. An example I picked out was, you should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. The dashes force the reader into pauses, and I think that the purpose of that is for Poe to have emphasis on what he's saying, for it to really speak out for the reader. With what caution, with what foresight. And this one, he's trying to again prove how well he was able to kill the man and how easily it was and how smart he was while doing it. He didn't leave any trace of what he did. Vivid descriptions. The example I used is, he the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Poe had a lot of descriptions in the story, but most of them focused on what the narrator was doing. For example, on page 2, he mentions how his thumb was slipping on the lantern, and it created a ray of light to go on the old man's eye. But he doesn't describe the house or what the old man really looks like besides his eye, or what the narrator looks like himself. I believe that if the story was rewritten today, I think this would have been more descriptions would have been made, as in the appearance. He painted such a picture of what he was doing that he left out a lot of descriptions about what everything looked like. And I think that does a lot for the reader. I know it did a lot for me, and I think that's why I'm so attracted to this story, because it's so different than what we read today. Moving on to symbolism, I believe the three parts I want to analyze are the evil eye, the beating heart, and the house. To start off with the evil eye, I believe the eye kind of symbols for perception. Sorry, I'm trying to say precipitation. Perception and supernatural evil. Perception, the narrator believed that the eye was evil, and it was his own perception. He believed the eye was evil, and that meant that the old man had to go. There was no other option. And supernatural evil, there's this idea that I think that the narrator believed that he had to kill the old man because his eye was evil. He was doing it for the greater good, kind of the idea of if you do something wrong for the greater good, is it still okay? The beating heart, I believe, stood for emotion and impulsive behavior. The narrator watched the old man for 7 nights and didn't kill him until the 8th. And he didn't kill him until he heard the man's heart beating when he was in the room and he had made a noise. And once he heard the heart beating, he was so overcome by this impulsive behavior and emotion about like worry if the neighbors were going to hear him and call somebody that he had to immediately kill them. That's what he did. I also think there's a belief that the beating heart and his impulsive behavior was almost guilt about what he knew he was about to do, which moves on to the house. I believe the house stood for repressed guilt. He buried the old man in the floorboards of the house, which I believe symbolizes how he was burying what he did. He could no longer stand for what he did, and he had to bury it deep down, and the house was a symbol for that. Moving on to themes. The main themes that I saw were mental health and guilt, and one that I still think I see, but I don't know if many other people see, is religion. Mental health, the whole purpose of the story is the narrator trying to explain how he is sane and he's stable-minded and he's okay, but in doing this, he does the exact opposite. He actually proves to the reader how he is not okay and he is mentally ill. Guilt's another big one. The beating heart really shows how his guilt is coming into an auditory hallucination. And he can no longer help it. In the end of the story, he has so much guilt that the beating heart gets louder and louder and louder, and he can no longer live with himself, and he confesses to killing the old man. For religion, I saw a few religious connotations throughout the story with the 7 days of watching the old man. 7 days is a religious number for God creating the earth. He did it for 7 days, as well as the evil eye. Many people say the eye is the window to the soul, and if the eye is evil, then the soul must have been evil as well, which is why I believe this, as I mentioned earlier, the narrator believed that he had to kill the man, because if he didn't, the man may have been evil and could have done something wrong, and so he believed that if he had to kill him for the greater good. That's my citation I used. Like I said, most of this is my own opinion, my own belief. I really enjoyed this story, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts and opinions on it. Thank you.